The clash between entitlement and accountability lies at the heart of Marcus Reed's explosive encounter with Karen and Todd Baxter, a tale that begins with a mundane parking spot and ends with a seismic reckoning. Karen Baxter epitomizes entitlement in its rawest form. A woman so steeped in privilege that she believes the world bends to her whims without question. When Marcus, a black Navy SEAL with a quiet strength forged through years of service, pulls into an open parking space she had her eye on, Karen doesn't just see a lost convenience. She sees an affront to her assumed supremacy. Her reaction isn't mere frustration. It's a volcanic eruption of vile racism, mocking his service to the country and belittling his very existence, as if his presence alone challenges her unwritten right to dominance. Words aren't enough for her. She escalates to violence, slapping Marcus across the face, convinced he won't dare retaliate. In her mind, her privilege is an impenetrable shield, a social armor that protects her from consequences and elevates her above accountability. She assumes Marcus, by virtue of his race and her perception of his place, will cower or retreat, because people like her have always gotten away with it. Whether it's cutting in line, berating service workers, or in this case, assaulting a man she deems beneath her. Her husband, Todd, barrels into the fray with the same blind arrogance, charging at Marcus with fists swinging, believing his size and aggression will put him in his place. Together, the Baxters represent a mindset that thrives on the delusion of invincibility, a belief that their status, white, suburban, self-righteous, grants them license to act without fear of reprisal. They're not just fighting for a parking spot. They're fighting to preserve a worldview where they're untouchable, where rules apply to others, but never to them. This entitlement, however, crashes headlong into Marcus Reed's unyielding resolve, a man whose life has been defined by discipline, not deference. Unlike the Baxters, Marcus doesn't operate on impulse or ego. His military training has taught him to measure risk, to read situations, to act only when necessary, and when he does, it's with precision. Karen's slap doesn't provoke a wild reaction. Todd's reckless charge doesn't unsettle him. Instead, he sidesteps their chaos with a calmness that unnerves them, letting their own aggression expose their fragility. Karen's privilege might have shielded her from accountability in smaller, quieter moments. Perhaps a snide remark ignored, a complaint brushed off. But this time, she's crossed a line in a world that's watching. The parking lot isn't an isolated bubble. It's a stage, surrounded by witnesses and cameras that capture every second of her unraveling. When she escalates from insults to physical blows, and when Todd follows suit with his sloppy, rage-fueled attack, they don't just lose a fight. They lose the narrative. Marcus doesn't need to raise his voice or throw the first punch. He lets their actions speak, and those actions scream entitlement stripped bare. The Baxters' assumption that they can hit, scream, and destroy without consequence begins to crumble the moment Marcus refuses to play their victim. His counter, knocking Todd out with a single surgical strike, isn't vengeance. It's a statement. Privilege doesn't trump reality. The story's real power lies in how this entitlement unravels into accountability, a slow-motion collapse that the Baxters can't outrun. Karen's initial smugness, her belief that her slap cemented her victory, morphs into panic as Marcus stands firm, unshaken. Her threats about Todd teaching him a lesson fall flat when Todd's aggression meets Marcus's skill, leaving him crumpled on the pavement. Their desperation peaks when Todd hurls a rock through Marcus's windshield, an act of petty spite that only deepens their hole. They flee, thinking distance will erase their sins, but the digital age ensures their escape is temporary. Video evidence spreads like wildfire, stripping away the Baxters' ability to spin the story. Karen's theatrics, sobbing to the police, claiming victimhood, collapse under the weight of footage showing her racism and violence in stark clarity. Todd's bravado fades as he wakes up in a cell, bruised and beaten, his career and reputation in tatters. The legal system, bolstered by Marcus's decision to press charges, delivers a final blow: jail time, probation, fines, and a civil lawsuit that drains their accounts. Their entitlement, once a shield, becomes a noose. Every step they took to assert their imagined superiority only tightened it further. They underestimated Marcus, assuming he'd bend to their will, but his refusal to bow forces them to face a truth they've long ignored. Actions have consequences, and privilege can't rewrite evidence. This unraveling isn't just personal, it's societal. The Baxters' downfall resonates because it exposes a fault line in how entitlement operates when unchecked. Karen and Todd didn't just lose a parking spot. They lost everything: jobs, social standing, their suburban facade, because they couldn't fathom a world where they'd be held accountable. Marcus, by contrast, embodies the antithesis. A man who's earned his place through sacrifice, not assumption, and who wields that strength to demand justice, not dominance. The narrative revels in this inversion, showing how the Baxters' arrogance becomes their undoing when they pick the wrong target. A man who's faced real threats, not fragile egos. Their story is a cautionary tale, a vivid illustration that privilege, no matter how deeply ingrained, can't outlast the weight of one's own choices when the spotlight turns on. Marcus doesn't just win, he redefines the battlefield, proving that accountability isn't optional when you've built your life on the delusion of being above it. If you're gripped by this tale of entitlement meeting its match, don't miss out on more stories like this. Hit that subscribe button on the channel. We're diving deep into the moments where justice prevails and arrogance crumbles, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. Tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from, whether it's New York, London, or anywhere else, and let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe now and stay locked in for the next chapter. Justice through restraint and resolve defines Jalen Bennett's triumph over Lisa and Brad Whitmore, a saga that unfolds not with reckless fury, but with the quiet, unshakable power of a man who knows his worth and wields it like a blade honed through years of sacrifice. From the moment Lisa's shrill voice pierces the parking lot air, spitting venomous racism and entitlement, Jalen stands as a fortress of calm amid her storm. His chest tightens, not with fear, but with the weight of 1,000 past slights, 1,000 moments where he's swallowed the bile of prejudice to survive. He's a Navy SEAL, a warrior who's stared down death in foreign sands, who's carried the bodies of brothers lost to war. Yet here he is, facing a woman whose greatest battle is her own fragile ego. Her slap lands hard against his cheek, a sharp sting that echoes through his skull. And for a fleeting second, the heat of rage flares in his veins. Rage not just at her, but at every injustice he's endured, every time he's been reduced to less than human by eyes like hers. But Jalen doesn't flinch. His breath steadies, slow and deliberate, a rhythm drilled into him through years of training, through nights of terror where panic meant death. He feels the crowd's eyes on him, hears their gasps, senses the tension coiling tighter, but he locks it all away. Restraint isn't weakness. It's his shield, his weapon, his defiance. Lisa's smug grin falters as he meets her gaze, unblinking, his silence louder than her shrieks. She wanted a reaction, a crack in his armor to justify her hate, but Jalen denies her that victory. His heart pounds, not with anger now, but with a resolve as cold and unyielding as steel. He will not let her define him. Not today, not ever. This restraint isn't passive. It's a calculated force, a dam holding back a flood of emotion that could drown them all. When Lisa lunges again, her nails clawing wildly, Jalen sidesteps with the grace of a predator, his muscles taut, his mind racing through every possible outcome. He could end this in seconds. Snap her wrist, drop her to the pavement, let her taste the fear she's so eager to inflict. But he doesn't. Not because he can't, but because he won't. He's seen chaos, lived it, and he knows the cost of losing control. His brothers in arms, the ones who didn't come home, whisper in his memory, "Stay sharp, stay steady." So he does. Each of her flailing strikes meets air, her rage a pathetic dance against his stillness, and the crowd's murmurs grow. Shock, turning to awe. Then Brad charges in, a bull of a man fueled by blind aggression, his fists swinging in wide, sloppy arcs. Jalen's pulse quickens, a flicker of adrenaline surging as he shifts, letting the punches sail past, feeling the wind of Brad's desperation graze his skin. The weight of it all presses on him. The insults, the violence, the sheer audacity of their entitlement. But he channels it, turns it into focus. When Brad spits a final, hateful slur, something so vile it makes even the onlookers recoil, Jalen's restraint snaps, not into chaos, but into precision. His fist connects with Brad's jaw, a single, devastating blow, and the crack echoes like a gunshot. Brad crumples, unconscious before he hits the ground, and Jalen stands over him, chest heaving, the sting in his knuckles a fleeting reminder of justice served. His eyes burn with a quiet fire, not of triumph, but of necessity. He didn't want this, but they left him no choice. That moment of action, though, is just the beginning. Jalen's resolve carries him beyond the physical fight into a battlefield of principle. Lisa's screams pierce the air, her fake tears staining her face as she clutches at Brad's limp form. But Jalen feels no pity, only a hollow ache for the world that let her think this would work. The police arrive, their hands hovering near holsters, their voices sharp with suspicion, and Jalen's stomach twists. He knows this script. Black man, white woman, a scene primed for misunderstanding. His hands rise slowly, palms open, a gesture of compliance that tastes bitter on his tongue. Not because he's guilty, but because he's forced to prove it. The weight of their eyes, the unspoken assumptions, press down on him, a burden he's carried since he was old enough to notice. But then the tide turns. A voice cuts through. "I saw the whole thing." And the store manager's phone lights up with footage, Lisa's racism and violence laid bare. Jalen's breath catches, not in relief, but in vindication. The officers' faces shift, their certainty cracking, and Lisa's sobs turn frantic as the cuffs snap onto her wrists instead. Jalen's heart swells, not with joy, but with a grim satisfaction. He could have walked away, let it fade into another forgotten wound, but he didn't. He presses charges, his voice steady as he lists their crimes: assault, vandalism, reckless endangerment. Each word is a brick in the wall of justice he's building, a wall Lisa and Brad can't climb. The courtroom looms ahead, and Jalen sits there, spine straight, eyes fixed, as the judge's gavel falls. 6 months for Lisa, a year for Brad, fines and restitution bleeding them dry. His chest tightens again, not with anger now, but with the weight of what this means. They'll pay. Not just in time or money, but in the shattering of their illusions. The emotional crescendo peaks as Jalen drives away from their crumbling suburban prison. The new car beneath him, a symbol of their defeat, funded by their own downfall. He hears their voices through the walls, Lisa's shrieks, Brad's roars, tearing each other apart as their lives unravel. A pang of something, sorrow maybe, flickers in his chest, not for them, but for the wreckage of human potential, reduced to this. He doesn't linger. The road stretches ahead, open and free, and his grip on the wheel steadies as the city lights blur past. This isn't just his victory. It's a beacon for every soul who's stood where he has, every heart that's ached under the weight of hate and held back the scream. Jalen's restraint wasn't weakness. It was power, a force that turned Lisa and Brad's chaos against them, a resolve that bent the world toward justice when it could have broken him instead. His eyes glisten not with tears but with the clarity of purpose. He fought not for himself alone, but for the ones who couldn't, the ones who didn't make it, the ones still waiting for their turn. The Whitmore's names will fade into infamy, their lives a cautionary echo, while Jalen drives on. Unbroken, unbowed, a man who turned pain into strength and silence into thunder. Now, listener, you've journeyed with Jalen through this storm of rage and redemption. Don't let it end here. Step into the final chapter with us. Hit that subscribe button on the channel, because this isn't just a story, it's a call, a pulse, a testament to standing tall when the world tries to knock you down. Tell us where you're listening from. Chicago, Sydney, anywhere. And let your voice join the chorus. Subscribe now and stay with us to the end, where justice doesn't just whisper, it roars. Come on, be part of this. Jalen's waiting. The power of evidence in the digital age emerges as the unshakable cornerstone of Jalen Bennett's harrowing encounter with Lisa and Brad Whitmore. A lifeline so vivid and relentless it yanks him from the brink of injustice, thrusting the raw, unfiltered truth into a blazing spotlight. A saga that transforms a parking lot brawl into a soul-stirring testament of endurance, captured in frames that'll clutch your heart and demand you stand with a man who's weathered storms most can't fathom. Jalen plants his feet on the cracked asphalt, the sting of Lisa's slap radiating across his cheek, her voice a venomous lash. "You people don't belong here!" sinking fangs into scars he's borne since childhood. He's a Navy SEAL, a warrior who's knelt in blood-soaked sand, cradling his brother in arms, Terrell, as his last breath rasped out under a foreign sky, whispering, "Tell my mom I tried." A promise Jalen kept through a tear-choked call to a woman he'd never met. Yet here, in this strip mall glare, he's stripped to a stereotype by Lisa's privilege, her entitlement a blindfold to the battles he's etched into his bones. His chest tightens, not from her blow but from the echo of his mother's voice, frail and fading last year in her hospital bed. Cancer stealing her breath as she gripped his hand, pleading, "Look out for Ray, Jalen. He's lost without you." A vow he's clung to for his younger brother Ray, who's spiraled since her death, his addiction a shadow Jalen's fought to pull him from. Lisa's hate isn't new. It's the shopkeeper who tailed him at 12, the teacher who assumed he'd fail at 16, the quiet ache of proving his worth, just to stand still. The crowd circles, phones flickering like cold stars, and Jalen's pulse races, knowing they might see only the black man she's painting, not the son who skipped sleep last week to sit with Ray in rehab, coaxing him through withdrawal with a hoarse, "You're enough, man." Lisa's rage surges, her nails clawing at him, her shrieks branding him a thief of her space, and Jalen's throat burns, not from her scratches, but from the weight of a promise he made to Ray 3 nights ago, driving him home from the clinic, his brother's shaky hands clutching a coffee Jalen bought, muttering, "I'll try for you." A fragile hope Jalen's desperate to shield. He dodges her wild swings, his training a lifeline, but the real gut punch lands when Brad storms in, a hulking wave of unchecked fury, his fists swinging with the sloppy arrogance of a man who's never had to scrape for his place. Jalen's counter is swift, a single blow dropping Brad cold, but the crack of his fall echoes with a pang. Because yesterday, he'd sat with his niece, Lila, Ray's daughter, her tiny voice asking, "Why's Daddy so sad, Uncle Jalen?" as she clutched a teddy he'd won her at a fair, her trust a light he's vowed to guard since Keisha's death left him the family's anchor. The rock comes next. Brad's desperate hurl shattering Jalen's windshield, glass raining over the seat where Lila rides, where she'd left her scribbled note, "Love you, Uncle Jay," tucked in the console after their last trip to the park. Jalen's fists clench, not from anger at the car he'd patched together through overtime, but from the searing ache of losing that piece of her faith, a tether to the stability he's bled to build since their mother's passing tore their world apart. The sirens pierce the air, a jagged wail, and Jalen's stomach plummets, dread coiling tight as two officers step out, their gazes locking onto him, black, unyielding, beside a sobbing Lisa and a crumpled Brad. "Hands up now!" one barks, his hand twitching toward his holster, and Jalen's arms rise, slow and deliberate, a surrender that tastes like ash on his tongue. He knows this script. 2 months ago, he'd been pinned against a wall outside Ray's apartment, cops ignoring his pleas. "I'm just here for my brother," until a neighbor's shaky video showed him carrying groceries. Not trouble. Lila's cries from the window haunting him as he begged, "She's scared. Let me go to her." Now Lisa's wails. "He's violent. He attacked us." Weave a noose he's felt before, and Jalen's knees tremble, not from fear of cuffs, but from the terror of failing Ray again, of Lila's trust fading, of Terrell's dying wish slipping through his fingers. His voice steadies. "She assaulted me. Ask the witnesses." But it's drowned by her theatrics, her clutching at an officer like a lifeline. The cuffs glint, inches from his wrists, and Jalen's heart thunders, a silent scream rising. Not now, not for them, because last night he'd sat with Ray, his brother's head on his shoulder, promising, "We'll get you clean. I'm here." A vow he can't break when Ray's first sober day in weeks hangs by a thread. The tension peaks, a breathless precipice, until a voice slices through. "I recorded it all." The store manager steps forward, phone trembling, and Jalen's breath stalls, hope surging as the screen flares. Lisa's slap, her racist venom, her wild claws, Brad's reckless charge, the rock's shattering crash, all etched in stark, undeniable truth. His chest heaves, not just from relief, but from the flood of every time he's been doubted. When he begged the shopkeeper to check the tapes, when he pleaded with the cops to see his uniform, when he held Ray after a relapse, swearing, "We'll make it, together." The officers' faces twist, their certainty cracking, and Jalen's hands lower, shaking with a gratitude so raw it burns, because this isn't just his victory, it's Ray's, Lila's, Terrell's mom's, a breach in the wall that's boxed them in. Lisa's cuffs snap on, her sobs turning desperate. Brad stirs to find his fate sealed, and Jalen stands, his pulse a wild hymn. The crowd's murmurs a rising tide of vindication. The digital age, with its unblinking lens, doesn't just free him, it elevates him. A chorus of phones weaving a shield that catches the truth, a bulwark for a man who's carried too much to be crushed by lies. The courtroom delivers its final stroke. 6 months for Lisa, a year for Brad, fines bleeding them dry. And Jalen sits, his spine straight, his heart a quiet roar of triumph not for their ruin, but for his redemption. 4 days ago, he'd driven Ray to a new job interview, his brother's clean shirt a gift from Jalen's closet, Ray's shaky grin a flicker of light as he said, "I'm trying, Jalen, for Lila." And Jalen had hugged him, whispering, "You're doing it, man." Lila had run to him yesterday, her teddy in tow, her voice bright. "Daddy's better, Uncle Jalen, because of you." her hug a balm to every wound. The videos, a viral tempest, dismantle the Whitmores, reputations incinerated, lives unmade, while Jalen rebuilds, his car's new windshield gleaming, Lila's note taped inside, a symbol of a family stitched back together. He drives away, the road wide, Ray's voice on the phone planning a sober barbecue, Lila's giggle plotting a park day, and the audience aches for him. A brother, an uncle, a soldier who's lost so much, yet held firm, who turned a slap into a stand, who proved evidence can lift where doubt buries. The power of the digital age isn't just a tool, it's his deliverance, a clarion for a voice too long muted, a lifeline for a man who's earned every tear we shed and every cheer we raise. Systemic bias and its limits cast a shadow over Jalen Bennett's confrontation with Lisa and Brad Whitmore, a battle where the weight of prejudice nearly crushes him before evidence claws its way to the surface, proving that even a flawed system can bend toward justice when the truth is undeniable. Jalen stands in the parking lot, his cheek still burning from Lisa's slap, her racist venom. "You people think you can take whatever you want," ringing in his ears like a haunting refrain from a past he's never escaped. His heart pounds, not from her strike, but from the echoes of 1,000 other moments. The teacher who assumed he'd cheat, the store clerk who trailed him aisle by aisle, the night his father sat him down at 12, voice trembling, to explain why he'd have to work twice as hard just to be seen. He's a Navy SEAL, a man who's faced bullets and bombs, who's held dying friends in his arms. Yet here, in this mundane strip mall, he's reduced to a stereotype by a woman whose privilege blinds her to his humanity. Lisa's voice rises, shrill and unhinged, accusing him of ruining the country, and Jalen's chest tightens with a grief he rarely lets surface. Grief for his mother, who worked double shifts to keep him fed, only to collapse from exhaustion one winter night. Her last words a plea for him to make it through. He swallows it down, his jaw clenching, his breath steadying, because he knows the crowd watching, phones in hand, might not see the soldier, the son, the man. They might only see the threat Lisa paints him as. When Brad charges, fists flying, Jalen's resolve hardens. He dodges, strikes once, and Brad crumples. But the victory feels hollow, because he knows what's coming next. The police sirens wail, cutting through the chaos, and Jalen's stomach drops, a cold dread settling in his bones. 2 officers step out, their eyes locking onto him. Black, tall, standing over a fallen white man, a sobbing white woman at his side. And he feels the script unfold before they even speak. "Let her go and put your hands where we can see them," one barks, hand on his holster, and Jalen's throat tightens, a bitter taste rising. He's been here before, 3 years ago, pulled over for a broken taillight that wasn't broken. His uniform in the back seat ignored as they pressed him against the car, cuffs biting his wrists until a passing sergeant recognized him and intervened. Now, his hands rise, slow and deliberate, each movement a surrender to a system that's never fully trusted him, despite the medals pinned to his chest, despite the nights he's woken screaming from memories of war. Lisa's wails, "He's hurting me, he's violent," pierce the air, and Jalen's mind flashes to his sister, Tasha, who called him sobbing last month after a co-worker's joke about her hair left her humiliated, her voice breaking as she asked, "Why do they hate us?" He wanted to shield her, to promise her a world that didn't judge her skin. But here he stands, defenseless against Lisa's lies, his own truth dangling by a thread. The officer's cuffs gleam, inches from his wrists, and Jalen's heart races. Not with fear of jail, but with the terror of failing Tasha, of proving her fears right, of becoming another name in a story that ends too soon. His eyes sting, but he blinks it back, his voice steady as he says, "This is a citizen's arrest. She attacked me." Though the words feel like shouting into a void. The tension peaks, a suffocating silence as the officers hesitate. Lisa's sobs, a manipulative symphony, and Jalen feels the weight of every black man who stood in his shoes, unheard, unseen, undone by bias too deep to uproot. He thinks of his best friend, Marcus, lost to a roadside bomb, who'd laughed with him over beers about outrunning stereotypes, only to die a hero the world barely mourned. Jalen's knees ache to buckle, not from fatigue, but from the exhaustion of carrying this burden, of proving his worth again and again to a system that doubts him at every turn. The officer steps closer, cuffs in hand, and Jalen's breath hitches, until a voice slices through. "I saw the whole thing." The store manager emerges, phone raised, and Jalen's pulse stutters, hope flickering like a fragile flame. The screen flares to life, Lisa's racism spilling out in crystal clarity, her slaps, her threats, Brad's wild swings, and the officers freeze, their faces twisting as the truth unravels their assumptions. Jalen's hands lower, trembling not from weakness, but from the surge of relief, the vindication that washes over him like rain after a drought. The cuffs shift to Lisa's wrists, her screams turning desperate, and Jalen exhales, a shuddering breath that carries the weight of Marcus, Tasha, his mother, all the ones he's fought for, all the ones he's refused to let down. The crowd's murmurs turn to nods, the evidence a lifeline that pulls him from the brink, proving bias has limits when confronted with unassailable proof. In the courtroom, Jalen sits, his posture rigid, his eyes locked on the judge as the gavel falls. 6 months for Lisa, a year for Brad, and his chest swells, not with pride, but with a quiet triumph for every soul who's faced this fight. He'd spent the night before with Tasha, her head on his shoulder, as they watched old home videos, her laughter a balm to his scars, and he'd vowed to keep pushing, to show her a world where justice isn't a dream. The videos, viral now, dismantle the Whitmores' lives, jobs lost, reputations ruined, while Jalen stands tall, a man who's weathered bias and emerged unbroken. The system tried to bury him, but evidence lifted him up, a testament to his resilience, his pain, his unbreakable will. He drives away, the road ahead clear, carrying the echoes of his mother's plea, Tasha's hope, Marcus's sacrifice, proof that even in a biased world, one man's truth can prevail. Listeners, you've seen Jalen's heart laid bare, his battles, his losses, his unyielding spirit. Hit that like button to lift him up, to cheer for a man who's fought not just for himself, but for everyone who's felt the sting of prejudice. Your support fuels his fire, encourages him to keep standing tall against the odds. Drop a like now. Let's show Jalen he's not alone in this fight, that we're with him, rooting for every step he takes toward justice. Systemic bias and its limits weave a taut thread through Jalen Bennett's explosive encounter with Lisa and Brad Whitmore, a moment where the air crackles with the unspoken weight of prejudice, threatening to snuff out a man who's already carried more than most could bear. Yet it's a story that unfurls into a fragile, hard-won triumph that'll keep you holding your breath until the final word. Jalen stands in that parking lot, the sting of Lisa's slap radiating across his cheek, her voice a venomous lash. "You people don't belong here!" cutting deeper than her hand ever could. It's not just her hate that slices into him. It's the echo of every time he's been dismissed, every glance that sized him up and found him wanting. He's a Navy SEAL, a man who's cradled dying comrades under a sky lit by gunfire, who's come home to a daughter whose tiny arms wrap around him like he's her whole world. Yet here he is, facing a woman whose entitlement blinds her to the scars he wears beneath his skin. His heart thuds, heavy with the memory of his wife, Keisha, lost to a car accident 3 years ago. Her laughter silenced, her dreams for their little girl, Aisha, left in his trembling hands. Lisa's words claw at that wound, threatening to unravel the man he's fought to become. But Jalen locks his jaw, his breath a slow rhythm against the chaos. He feels the crowd's eyes, hears their whispers, knows they're waiting for him to snap. Because that's the script, isn't it? The angry black man, the threat, the one who proves the bias right. But Jalen won't give it to them. His daughter's face flickers in his mind, her gap-toothed grin at last week's soccer game, her voice begging him to stay safe, Daddy. And he clings to that promise, refusing to let Lisa's rage define him. The tension coils tighter as Lisa escalates, her nails slashing at him, her shrieks painting him as a monster, and Jalen's chest aches, not from her blows, but from the weight of a lifetime spent proving he's more than what they see. He sidesteps her fury, his training a lifeline, but the real blow lands when Brad charges, all bluster and fists, a man too drunk on privilege to know he's outmatched. Jalen's counter is swift, a single punch felling Brad like a broken toy. But there's no thrill in it, just a hollow pang, a reminder of the boy he once was, bullied on a playground until he learned to fight back, only to find the world still waiting to punish him for it. He thinks of his father, a janitor who scrubbed floors to send him to college, who died of a heart attack whispering, "Make me proud, son." And Jalen's throat burns with the fear that this moment, standing over Brad, Lisa's wails rising, might erase that pride. The sirens wail, and Jalen's gut twists, a cold wave crashing over him as 2 officers step out, their hands hovering near guns, their eyes narrowing at the sight. Black man, white woman crying, white man down. "Let her go now," one snaps, and Jalen's hands rise, slow and steady, though his soul screams against the injustice. He's been here before. 6 months ago, detained at a gas station for looking suspicious, his pleas ignored until a camera proved he'd just been pumping gas. Aisha waiting in the car, her tears soaking his shirt when he finally got free. Now Lisa's sobs. "He's dangerous, he attacked us. We've a noose he knows too well." And Jalen's knees tremble, not from weakness, but from the terror of losing Aisha to a system that might take him away. The air thickens, suffocating, as the officers close in, cuffs glinting like a promise of ruin, and Jalen's mind races to Aisha's last birthday, her tiny hands pressing a drawing into his palm, a stick figure family with Keisha's ghost smiling down. He'd promised her he'd always come home, but now, with Lisa's lies ringing out, that promise teeters on a knife's edge. His voice, steady despite the storm inside, cuts through. "This is a citizen's arrest. She assaulted me." But it's drowned by her theatrics, her clutching at an officer like a damsel saved. Jalen's heart hammers, a desperate rhythm, because he knows how this ends. Another black man cuffed, another story twisted, another father torn from his child. He sees Keisha's eyes in his mind, pleading with him to hold on, and his fists clench not to fight but to anchor himself against despair. The officer's hand grips the cuffs, inches from his wrists, and Jalen's breath catches, until a voice pierces the haze. "I saw it all!" The store manager steps forward, phone aloft, and the world shifts. The screen flares, Lisa's racism unspooling in vivid color, her slap, her claws, Brad's wild swings, and Jalen's knees nearly buckle, not from fatigue, but from a surge of hope so raw it stings. The officers falter, their faces hardening as they turn to Lisa, her lies crumbling under the weight of truth. And Jalen exhales, a shuddering release, the ghost of Keisha's hand on his shoulder urging him to stand tall. The cuffs snap onto Lisa instead, her screams turning frantic, and Jalen's eyes glisten. Not with tears, but with the fierce, fragile light of a man who's clawed his way out of the dark. The courtroom looms, and Jalen sits, his spine rigid, his pulse steady now, as the judge's voice rings out. 6 months for Lisa, a year for Brad. And his chest swells with a quiet victory, not just for him, but for Keisha, for Aisha, for every soul who's felt this weight. Last night, he'd tucked Aisha in, her sleepy voice murmuring, "You're my hero, Daddy." And that vow, to be her shield, her proof that goodness endures, carries him now. The evidence, captured by a dozen phones, dismantles the Whitmores' lives, careers gone, names stained, while Jalen emerges, battered but unbroken, a testament to the limits of bias when truth holds firm. He drives away, the road open, Aisha's laughter echoing in his ears, and the system's flaws fade behind him, outmatched by a man who refused to break. Listeners, you've felt Jalen's heart. His love, his loss, his fight against a world too quick to judge. Don't let it end here. Drop a comment below to cheer him on, to tell him he's not alone, that his strength inspires you. Your words can lift him, fuel him, remind him that every step he takes echoes for us all. Comment now. Keep listening, keep believing, because Jalen's story isn't over and he needs you with him to the end. Systemic bias and its limits weave a jagged, pulsing thread through Jalen Bennett's raw showdown with Lisa and Brad Whitmore, a clash that begins with a parking spot but spirals into a crucible where prejudice nearly drowns him, only to crack open into a fragile triumph that'll grip your heart and hold you tight until the final echo fades. Jalen stands there, the asphalt cold beneath his boots, Lisa's slap a sharp jolt across his face, her voice a venomous snarl. "You don't belong here," striking not just his skin, but the tender core of a man who's spent his life proving he does. He's a Navy SEAL, a warrior who's walked through fire, who's carried the weight of a nation's wars, yet in this strip mall glare, he's reduced to a shadow by a woman whose entitlement blinds her to the dreams he's nursed in silence. His breath hitches, not from pain, but from the memory of his old neighborhood block party last summer. Miss Ida's warm hands pressing a plate of peach cobbler into his palms, her eyes crinkling as she said, "You're our pride, Jalen." The kids chasing fireflies, their laughter a fragile thread of hope he's fought to protect. Lisa's hate threatens to unravel that, her words a blade against the quiet vow he made that night, to build a world where those kids could dream without fear. The crowd watches, phones flickering like stars, and Jalen feels their judgment, knows they might see only the threat she's crafting, not the man who's poured his soul into holding his community together. The tension thickens, a storm brewing as Lisa's fury surges, her fists flailing, her screams branding him a scourge, and Jalen's throat burns, not from her blows, but from the ache of a promise he whispered to his best friend Reggie over a late-night beer 2 weeks ago. "I'll keep us strong, man." Reggie, a barber who's cut hair for every kid on the block, had nodded, his tired eyes reflecting years of scraping by, and Jalen had felt the weight of that trust, the unspoken pact to shield their corner of the world from crumbling. He deflects Lisa's wild swings, his body a coiled spring, but the real fight brews when Brad charges, all muscle and rage, a man who's never known the quiet desperation of proving your worth. Jalen's strike is swift, a clean blow that drops Brad cold, but the thud reverberates with a pang, because Jalen sees Reggie's son, little Jamal, in his mind, the boy who'd tugged his sleeve last month asking, "You think I can be like you?" and Jalen had knelt, promising, "Better, kid." His voice thick with a hope he's scared to lose. The sirens wail, a jagged cry slicing the air, and Jalen's gut twists as two officers emerge, their gazes pinning him. Black, steady, beside a shrieking white woman and a fallen white man. "Hands up now!" one barks, fingers brushing his holster, and Jalen's hands rise, a slow surrender that tastes like ash, his heart pounding with the fear that this moment could steal everything he's built. Not for him, but for them. The world narrows, a suffocating pulse, as the officers advance, cuffs glinting like a verdict, and Jalen's mind reels, not to war, but to the barber shop, Reggie's steady clippers buzzing last week as he'd said, "You're the one who makes us believe, Jalen." The weight of those words a lifeline now. Lisa's wails. He's a thug. He attacked us. We've a trap. And Jalen's legs tremble, not from fatigue, but from the dread of failing Miss Ida, Reggie, Jamal. Of letting their faith in him splinter under a system that's always looked past him. He thinks of the community garden he helped plant last spring, the kids' hands in the dirt beside his, their giggles as they named the sunflowers, and his voice shakes as he says, "She assaulted me. This is a citizen's arrest," a plea that feels like shouting into a void. The officer's eyes narrow, the cuffs inches away, and Jalen's chest caves, a quiet sob rising. Not for himself, but for the barbershop's laughter, the garden's bloom, the dreams he's tended like fragile shoots against a storm. Then a voice cuts through. "I've got it all here." And the store manager steps up, phone trembling, the screen flaring with Lisa's racism, her violence, Brad's collapse. Jalen's breath stalls, a surge of relief so sharp it stings, the officers' faces shifting as the truth peels back their bias, and his hands lower, his pulse a wild hymn of gratitude, not just for freedom, but for the chance to keep those sunflowers growing. The courtroom hums, a final reckoning, and Jalen sits, his shoulders squared, his gaze steady as the judge's gavel falls. 6 months for Lisa, a year for Brad. And his heart swells, not with vengeance, but with a tender ache for Miss Ida's cobbler, Reggie's trust, Jamal's wide eyes. Last night, he'd stood in that garden, the sunflowers swaying under the moon, and whispered, "I kept it alive," his voice breaking with the weight of a promise held. The videos, a digital tidal wave, shatter the Whitmores. Careers lost, lives unmade, while Jalen stands, a man who's faced bias's teeth and found its breaking point, his car rebuilt, his spirit a quiet flame. He drives away, the road wide, the barbershop's buzz a melody in his soul, the system's flaws fading behind a truth that held firm. For him, for them, for the fragile, fierce hope he carries still. Listeners, you've walked Jalen's road, felt his fight, his love, his unshaken roots. Drop a comment below to lift him up, to tell him his community's pride burns bright in you too. Your words can fuel him, remind him he's not alone, that every sunflower he's planted blooms because of him. Comment now. Stay with us, because Jalen's story lives on, and he's counting on your voice. Self-destruction through pride unfurls as the dark, inexorable tide that sweeps Lisa and Brad Whitmore into their own abyss. A vivid counterpoint to Jalen Bennett's steadfast climb. A finale so layered with retribution and redemption, it'll seize your spirit, pull you through the wreckage of their hubris, and land you in a dawn so bright with promise, you'll be cheering for a man who turned a tempest into a testament, crafting a good ending that resonates with hope and hard-won grace. 3 years have drifted by since the parking lot flared into a battleground, since Lisa's slap cracked across Jalen's cheek like a thunderclap, since Brad's fists swung wild against Jalen's unyielding resolve, since their prideful spiral spun them into a courtroom where the gavel's fall marked their undoing. 6 months for Lisa, a year for Brad, fines and restitution bleeding them dry until their once comfortable lives lay in tatters. Now Lisa haunts a dingy one-bedroom apartment on the city's edge, her once manicured hands roughened by dishwater from a diner job she despises, her entitlement a fading wraith that stalks her every waking hour. She'd tried to claw her way back, leaving voicemails for old contacts, but the lines went dead, her name a hiss of contempt, her pride a shackle forged in every venomous word she spat that day. Brad, paroled after 12 months, trudges through a gravel yard, his once broad shoulders stooped under the weight of a shovel, his bravado a broken echo that fades as he stares at the peeling walls of a halfway house. His last outreach to Jalen, a crumpled letter of remorse, left unanswered, not from bitterness, but because Jalen's hands are full with a future their ruin helped seed. Their collapse, once a viral wildfire, careers incinerated. Home auctioned off, their suburban throne reduced to dust, stands as a monument to pride's devastating pull, a lesson carved deep in the debris of their refusal to bend, a cautionary tale whispered in the streets they once ruled. Jalen, though, doesn't linger on their shadow. He's behind the wheel of a new pickup, its slate-gray finish a quiet gift from their payout, driving not to gloat over their fall, but to a reclaimed factory he's reshaped into Bennett's Haven, a youth sanctuary where his daughter Nia dashes toward him, her braids bouncing, her voice a clear chime, "Daddy, the garden's blooming." And Jalen's chest swells, not with their defeat, but with the tender, fierce glow of her belief in him. A belief he's nurtured since Keisha's death left him her sole beacon in a fractured world. The Whitmore's pride, a blaze that consumed them whole, casts a long, jagged shadow Jalen strides past, their ruin a cracked mirror reflecting his renewal. Lisa's descent from that first slap was a torrent of arrogance, her racist tirade spilling out like poison, her wild claws slashing at Jalen, her theatrical sobs for the police, all rooted in a delusion of invincibility, a belief that her status would shield her from consequence, a fantasy that shattered when the videos exploded online, her lies stripped bare in the harsh light of truth, her 6 months in jail, a bitter reckoning she endured in isolation, emerging to a world that had scrubbed her clean from its memory, her real estate empire, a ghost, her pride a prison she locked herself within. She'd stood outside Bennett's Haven once, 6 months back, her coat threadbare, her voice a brittle plea for a chance to make amends. But Jalen had been inside, teaching kids to plant seeds, his back to her, and she'd shuffled off, her hubris a weight no one would shoulder. Brad's fall was louder. Roar! His reckless charge at Jalen, his rock shattering the windshield in a fit of spite, his panicked flight from the scene, all driven by a macho certainty he'd prevail. A certainty that crumbled when Jalen's single, surgical strike dropped him cold, when the cuffs snapped tight, when a year behind bars burned away his swagger, leaving a man who now flinches at the clang of steel gates, his pride a mausoleum he built with every swing. Their story could have ended there, a bleak footnote of arrogance undone, but Jalen's arc bends upward, a deliberate pivot from their chaos to his calm. He's at the Haven every dawn, his SEAL discipline now a soft, steady force as he mentors kids like Malik, a wiry boy who'd confessed last fall, "I'm scared I'll end up nowhere." And Jalen had sat with him, promising, You're going somewhere great. We'll get there together. His words sparking a tutoring program that's lifted Malik and dozens more. Reflection has been his North Star. Late nights, after Nia's bedtime stories, he's held Keisha's faded journal, her looping script dreaming of a safe space for kids, and he's traced those lines with a calloused finger, vowing to make them real, turning the Whitmore's whirlwind into a haven where kids' laughter drowns out their silence, where Reggie's barbershop crew drops by with free cuts, where a community once frayed by distrust now weaves itself whole. The haven's 4th anniversary bursts forth, a golden summer day thrumming with life. Basketball courts alive with bouncing balls, gardens blooming with Nia's marigolds, the air thick with grilling ribs, and Miss Ida's cobbler, her warm chuckle dubbing Jalen "our rock" as she hands him a plate. He stands amid the bustle, Nia tugging him to a mural they've painted. A towering tree, its branches cradling names of every child who's found refuge here, its roots a testament to rising above ruin. His throat catches, not from old wounds, but from this moment, where Malik reads a poem he wrote, his voice bold, where Tasha, a shy girl, unveils a sketch of a plane she dreams of flying, her eyes alight, where Reggie claps his shoulder, murmuring, "You've saved us, Jalen." He thinks of Lisa and Brad, their lives a distant ripple, and feels no venom, only a serene conviction that their pride's collapse cleared this soil, that their ruin was his rebirth. The ribbons cut, the crowd erupts, and Jalen steps forward, his voice a deep, clear current. This is for us, for every time we thought we'd break, but built instead. Nia's arms wrap his waist, her pride a flame he's chased through every shadow, and as the kids flood the space, he sees it, a world where pride doesn't bury, where ruin fuels renewal, where legacy outshines loss. He's not just a soldier, a father, a survivor. He's a maker, a man who took their storm and spun it into a shelter, proving that the end of their tale is the dawn of something eternal. This story hands you lessons to thread into your own days, wisdom Jalen's carved from the chaos. Stand tall when pride blinds others, because your worth isn't theirs to steal. Jalen didn't buckle under Lisa's hate, and you can face your trials with that same steel. Turn their fall into your flight. His restraint outlasted their rage, a nudge to let resilience shape you, not reaction break you. Pride's a trap, as it was for the Whitmores. Don't let it sink you. Anchor yourself in purpose, as Jalen did, and lift those around you when they stumble. Life will hurl its own Lisas and Brads your way, but Jalen's journey says you can turn their noise into your strength. Don't let arrogance define you. Let resolve refine you, and make your mark a gift for others. Their hubris buried them, but his reflection raised him. Look inward, grow outward, and let your legacy be a light that endures. You've got Jalen's fire in your veins. Claim it, live it, let it burn bright. Listeners, you've walked Jalen's path, felt his grit, his grace, his golden rise from a slap to a sanctuary. Hit that like button to shout his name, to say you see the man who turned a fight into a foundation, a ruin into a refuge. Drop a comment below. Tell him his haven moves you, his Nia's joy lights you, his triumph sparks your own, because your words can reach him, fuel his fire, echo in his soul. And subscribe to this channel for more stories like his, tales of heart and hustle that'll keep you riveted, hungry for the next beat. Like, comment, subscribe now. Jalen's legacy shines, and he's waiting for you to join him as this chapter fades and a new one dawns.